John 7, the people. In John 3 through 5, we meet Jesus' brother James and Jude. I know there are many who believe that Mary was a perpetual virgin. Okay, I don't agree because it says in Matthew 1, speaking about Joseph, that he took his wife, but knew her not until she had given birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. But let's say it is true and she was a perpetual virgin. These could have been Jesus' stepbrothers, the sons of Joseph, or possibly cousins. And we also see in the Gospel of Mark 6:3 that he had at least two other brothers, Jose and Simon. Whichever it was, what it does tell us that Jesus didn't grow up an only child. He had the trials of having siblings. Now, if you have a brother or sister, or 6 brothers or sisters like I grew up with, you know exactly what I mean when I say the words sibling rivalry. This is what we see here. Jesus' brothers are mocking him. They don't believe in him. How could their brother be the Son of God? This was the man who grew up with them. Jesus, being the oldest, probably looked out for them, and they would have been taking it as him bossing them around. And in this passage, they're saying, if you want to be such a show-off, why don't you go to the festival where there will be literally millions of people? Spoiler alert, these two eventually do believe Jesus is our Savior, and they actually wrote 2 of the New Testament books. The Jewish leaders, as we have seen in all the stories that John has told us thus far, are a very big part of the stories. At this time, Judah, where Jerusalem resides, is a Roman province. The Jewish leaders were appointed by the Romans. They allowed a Jewish king, who we'll meet later, whose name was Herod. However, Herod didn't have any power to make laws. He would have been more like a mayor who abides by the state and federal laws. The other leaders were the high priests. Their authority was the interpretation and the administration of the laws of Moses. In verse 32, we're introduced to the temple guard. The Pharisees sent the temple guard to bring Jesus to them. Well, during a festival as large as the Festival of Tabernacles, there would have been extra security at the temple. These guards were there to keep the peace. You would think of them like concert security. When Jesus tells the people he's going away and that they wouldn't be able to follow, they wondered, well, where was he going? Where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him, they said. Will he go to where our people live scattered among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? Well, who are these Greeks? It's thought that they're thinking about the people that never came back to Judea or Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity. The Babylonian captivity of the Jewish people happened around 598 years or so before Jesus was born. And those Jewish people were led away. All their menorahs, all the things from the temple, the dishes, everything was taken from them. And about 70 years later, the King Silas allowed the people to come back to Jerusalem or Judea and become a people again. Well, in 70 years, they mixed in with the Babylonian people, and most of them did not come home to Judea or Jerusalem. They may have still practiced their religion, but they didn't believe enough to make the pilgrimage home. They intermarried with the Babylonians. They may have even been believers of other gods. So most likely, these are the people that the statement was talking about, and Greeks in general could have been a synonym for the Gentiles or the non-believing Jewish people that were not Jewish people. person that we really want to look at very closely, and it's really you need to look at very closely in chapter 7, is the question that the people were discussing in verses 10 through 13, where they're asking each other, who is Jesus? Who is he? And some of them said he was a good man, and others said no, he deceives the people. And if he was a good man, then he wouldn't have been lying about being the Son of God. If he was a deceiver, he was lying about being the Son of God. But how is it that he is still believed in over 2,000 years later? The truth is, this is the question that we all have to ask ourselves. Who is Jesus to me? If I accept that he is the Son of God, if I accept that he brings a gift of grace, that I would be saved through that grace to live eternally with God, then we're following the right path. If we say, no, he was just a good man, well, he couldn't have been a good man and deceiving the people. But if you choose that he was not the Son of God, then you're choosing not to spend eternity with God. But it is your choice, and I pray that you make the right one today. And that's the end of John chapter 7. We've read the text, we've looked at the context, and we've looked at the people. Take time to have some prayer and meditation, and I'll see you next week for John 8.